Hello, welcome back to another tutorial on the new features of EnSight 10.2. In today's tutorial, we're going to talk about periodic stream traces. We have a model here which has periodic boundaries on either end, so the flow as it exits one boundary enters in the other. And this is quite common in pumps, turbomachinery, that type of models. In previous versions of EnSight, if we released streamlines and they exited the domain through whatever boundary, EnSight would stop the streamline. We had no constraint or condition given based on periodicity for the streamlines to continue. So let me show you what would happen currently. So we go to Place Tool, Line 2 points. I'm just going to release some streamlines from the Line tool up here. So let's release 50 streamlines from the Line tool. And you'll see that the streamlines stop when they exit the extent of the domain. They do not realize that the model is periodic and that as the streamlines exit this location, they should actually be re-entered down here and continue through and so forth through the domain. So new in EnSight 10.2, we can take this into account and have the streamlines continue through using periodicity. To do that, we need to set up one thing first. We have to set up that the fluid domain, or the parent for the streamline part, is periodic, and what extents does it have. So for each of your, in this case, fluid domain parts, we need to set up the periodicity. And this model is relatively easy. We only have one domain. So we'll go up to the visual symmetry. We're going to specify that this has rotational symmetry about the x-axis in this case. And new in 10.2, we actually specify just the number of sections in 360 degrees rather than the angular offset. So in this case, there's 41 sectors in 360 degrees, so we enter in 41 here. We can control how many instances are shown of the parent here. I'm just going to increase this up to 3 perhaps. So we have 3 instances shown in addition to our original one. So in terms of setup, we've set up for each fluid part the visual periodic symmetry, which is determined from your run. If you have models with varying or different parts with different periodic extents, you'll need to set those up individually here to specify the periodic symmetry. So if we go back and release a new set of streamlines, we're going to release 50 again. We're going to go to the advanced toggle here, and we're going to turn on compute using periodicity. Okay, so we're going to compute using periodicity now, and we have the model set up for periodic constraints specifications. So if we now create the streamlines, we now have 50 streamlines through the model. Let me turn off the original ones. That now continue. So as the periodic, or as the streamlines exit this location, they are entered in here. As they exit this location, they're entered in here, and so forth through the model. So we now have the streamlines that will traverse the periodic boundary, maintain themselves in the sector, and continue to compute through until they exit a non-periodic boundary. Okay, so to visualize these a little bit easier, we're going to turn on the visual symmetry for the particle trace part here as well. So we'll go up to visual symmetry, we'll change this to rotational, and we can specify how many we had here. So we'll specify 3 that we had. Okay. So now we can see what are these 2 middle ones, which show us a full singular extent through the model, whereas the ones on either end will show us sort of a partial view of that domain, if you like, of that particle trace. Okay, and then we can animate the particle traces here as well. So we'll go through and animate, and we have the animation of those particle traces through the domain. And for these middle 2 sectors, it's quite easy to see a continuous stream through for the particle trace. On the original and last sector, you can see it's a little bit more difficult to see because the particle traces will go through, visually kind of skip over to this part and then back to this one before exiting. Okay, so that's the capability in EnSight 10.2 to handle periodic domains. And really the only setup required is that for each of the parent parts, and in which case most times that's the fluid, you set up the periodic extents with the visual symmetry. You specify the axis and the offset here. You can alternatively specify a different origin as well. The origin at the moment is along the X, Y, and Z global axes, but if it's off on a different axis, you can specify the origin here as well. So once you've set up the visual symmetry constraints here, then when you create the periodic traces, you need to toggle on the compute using periodicity here. That's under the advanced toggle. Okay, and that should be it for handling periodic stream traces in EnSight 10.2.